Okay. Here we go. Yay, it works. Awesome.
Hi all, great to have you here. We are still getting hopefully some more people here in the space directly. So bear with us a minute. I'm sure maybe you can already share the link to also do the voting.
Absolutely. So I will share a link in the chat for everyone where you can participate in the voting later on. That will be explained by the speakers.
Exactly, and maybe here in the room you can also do the QR screenshot. Going out of the way. Does it work?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So for those online, if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them in the Q&A part later on. And otherwise, our faithful Lunch and Learn joiners know it. I'm going to record the session. I will be sending it out after the event, including the slides. And yeah, I think if you have any issues with hearing the speakers or anything, please feel free to put everything here in the chat and we'll try to take care of it as soon as possible. And then I think after that, I will hand over to our speakers. Cedric, would you quickly like to introduce yourself and then we can move on to Marc and then we can start.
Okay, great. My name is Cedric Ming. I'm Senior Associate at PwC Switzerland. I'll introduce myself a little bit more later, but now over to Marc Hauser.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Welcome everyone to this Lunch and Learn around NFTs. Yeah, and it's really the question today is what's up with those NFTs? And we want to give a little bit of an introduction. Welcome everyone online and welcome also everyone who dared to make the way in person. Great to see so many faces. I think more and more will also join. I think we had over 100 registrations, so a few will still show up. I hope you can see. Yes, I can see that you can see the slides. So maybe a few words just initially about myself. I'm the head of F10 Switzerland. F10, as most of you know by now, is an accelerator, incubator and accelerator globally. We have locations in obviously Zurich, but also in Singapore, as well as Madrid in Spain. And we really have a global ecosystem where we work together with our corporate partners and the startups in different stages. My background, you can see a little bit here. I have co-founded 2 companies in the past and pretty much 15 years now in the space of startups. I would like to hopefully that works, use now your voting. If you haven't yet, does it work now? Does it ask you a question?
No, it's the rate presentation.
It's oh, I need to maybe go present here. Now? So the first question really is, did you ever buy an NFT so far? Does it work with the, no?
It's still the rate presentation.
Okay.
So maybe it's 2 different QR codes?
No, it shouldn't be. Why not? Not working for anyone, huh? Okay, so what I can do potentially is just I let you do it at your own pace. Please don't rush too much, but basically now, does it work now to go next?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah, so the question is really, do you own an NFT? Did you ever buy one? So just owning it and getting it is not good enough. Yes, many. Okay, now it seems to be working. Cool. It's not showing here. Why?
I think the results are still hidden.
Yeah, for some reason you said in the corner, the results aren't hidden.
How do I get to this screen? Why is it not showing? PowerPoint, hide. So it does work on the other screen, but it doesn't work here. Great stuff.
I'd like to share this.
Mark, maybe in the interest of time, let's move on and allow the participants to fill out the form at their own time.
Yeah, I mean, I can show it here real quick. I don't know if you see it online. So basically what we have is a big majority of 53% say no, but they are planning to, and 18 yes, many, and 18% also yes, a few. Maybe you can see it through the camera a little bit. And then also feel free to just move to the next question here, which is basically how hard was it when you did that? Can I share this? Jesus, it's somehow okay. Okay, so it seems to be the tough part was really the creation of the. Oh no, easy. The tough part was to select an NFT. Yes, super tough. I totally get it. And then maybe easiest was to create the crypto wallet and buying the NFT. But overall, it seems people have it under control. So that's good to see, good to hear. So you're already very savvy on this. Cool. So I will just do an introduction and then hand over to Cedric. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say a little bit about my view. What is an NFT? What are we talking here, right? And maybe just for context, it was actually even the word of the year for 2021 when you believe Collins Dictionary. And then, so yes, money generally is very fungible, right? So you don't care which dollar, which Swiss franc you own. So that's when it's fungible. When it's not fungible, it's more that you really care which one it is. And with Dagobert Duck, I guess many of you still know him, with a lot of money. And he has one piece, the number one. So his first Kreutzer and sometimes Thaler that he got, basically for him, that's the very precious one. And he would go through the entire money just to find it again and go at grand flanks. So this one is really not fungible for him. So he will not trade it for any other, not even for a lot of money, right? So that's the concept about being fungible. You don't care which one, and non-fungible, you really care which one. Other non-fungible elements, obviously, is Mona Lisa, but also then things like a concert ticket or also the employee badge. There it really depends which one you have, and it's not just easy interchangeable. Okay, so why should you care, right? Why is this even important? Why can't I see this? Exactly. So just a few things, and then also Cedric will have more. So we really see the big brands moving in, but it is still early, right? You see Adidas, they have their NFT out, they're doing things with the Metaverse as well, but also the big other brands like Coca-Cola I have here, or McDonald's, but also then we see the Nike, they bought this RTFKT brand, but it's really still early. But with this, maybe the deep dive, Cedric, over to you.
Great, thanks. I believe you have to get out of the presentation because otherwise I can't switch over. Thank you so much. So I'll share my slides now. I hope everyone can see them.
Yep, works here.
Perfect. Okay, so let's look at the time. Okay, so hello everyone, and again from my side, welcome to today's F10 Lunch and Learn. The topic is the business and legal considerations of NFTs, Web3, and the Metaverse. I'll explain why I've selected the Web3 and the Metaverse later, but let's dive in. So again, my name is Cedric Ming. I'm a senior associate at PwC Switzerland. My team is working mainly on the business, legal, and compliance issues surrounding the use of digital assets, NFTs, and the metaverse. So we do consulting on the business strategy, the business model, and also the legal consulting in these areas. We advise both FS, so financial service, and non-FS clients, so non-financial service clients, on a daily basis. I think it's quite important to say that we are truly the first big four to deal with the issues surrounding NFTs, Web3, and the metaverse. What I think is really unique about our firm is that we can advise clients on a global level, wherever they choose to operate, through our network of firms and over 300,000 employees worldwide. I think this is particularly important for those for businesses due to the internationality of the NFT, metaverse, and Web3 sphere. The topic of today's speech, as you've probably already read on screen, is yeah, you can read right there. So I'll give you an introduction to NFTs and the different use cases in the metaverse and Web 3.0. Please also consider that we're really only at the beginning of this journey. And there's always new business models coming out almost on a daily basis. Towards the end, I will try and give aspiring Web 3.0 businesses some advice on how to develop their business based on what we've seen from working with our clients. So our clients are basically the smallest startups to the biggest corporates out there. So we have a broad range of experience working in this field. We'll finish off the presentation by giving you a glimpse into some of the legal issues, mainly that most businesses often are unaware of, or what we generally see they consider a bit too late, and they've already developed their business model, and then there comes that situation where you realize, oh no, I actually haven't really done my legal due diligence, and haven't really checked if this business model maybe needs a license or some sort of other approval. I think F10 can help you at the early stages of your business idea, and we at PwC can help you fine tune it at the later stage, give you a strategy, and work on the legal and tax advice. So let's move on to the agenda. So here's our agenda. Won't go into detail into it right now. I'll just start off with a quick intro to Web3, NFTs, and the history behind NFTs. Then the use cases, and I'll focus a little bit on DeFi and NFT financialization. Talk about the NFT market, then move on to the metaverse, and finish off with the challenges to Web 3.0 NFT business models and the legal issues surrounding NFTs. So what is Web 3.0 anyway? So you remember those days where you could log into a website with your username and password? Well, today you can sign in with your Facebook, your Gmail, or your Apple ID. Tomorrow, you'll be able to use your wallet. This is basically the idea behind Web 3.0. Another interpretation of what Web 3.0 has to do with content. So in Web 1.0, which was basically around the 90s to the early 2000s, you could basically read content on static HTML web pages. There was no real way for you to interact with the data, and the web was largely decentralized. With Web 2, we saw a shift to a more interactive internet in the early 2000s. We began to interact with websites through databases, through forums, social media. And this is what we call dynamic web, right? So participation started to grow because users were able to generate their own content on different social media platforms, streaming sites, etc. Right? Also, interoperability between the different sites and the applications became possible. However, Web 2.0 is also considered the age of targeted advertising and a lack of privacy. So a few big centralized players have significant power over the web currently. We can think of, the Googles, Facebooks, and Amazons of the world, right? In the future, we're heading more towards the Web 3, and here, users can actually own their own content. It's not really clear what will be the predominant technology, but signs point to P2P tech like blockchains, VR, AR, and IoT to be the key components of Web3. And at the end of the day, we're moving to a more decentralized model, an open and decentralized model. So we started off with Web 1.0, which was more decentralized. Web 2 was more centralized, and Web 3 hopefully now is becoming more decentralized. So in the next slides, I'll focus more specifically on the blockchain technology, specifically on NFTs as part of Web 3. So what exactly is an NFT? First and foremost, NFT stands for Non-Fungible Token. NFTs are a special type of blockchain-based digital asset or token. They are unique and non-interchangeable. They're unique and non-interchangeable with other digital assets or tokens. And generally, they're also scarce and have a limited supply. So usually, typically, you'll see like batches of 10,000 of unique set of NFTs, especially like in the art world. So you can think of like the Bay Area Yacht Club as one of these early NFT providers, right? Or creators, sorry. So fungible tokens, on the other hand, have the same characteristics as other tokens and can be replaced and interchanged. So an example of a fungible asset is a fiat currency like the Swiss franc or US dollar or Bitcoin, right? So what makes NFTs so special is that they're uniquely identified by their hash code on the distributed ledger or blockchain and are irreplaceable. Blockchains generally are governed by a set of rules called protocols, and one of them being obviously smart contracts deployed on the blockchain. The Ethereum blockchain allows for three types of smart contract protocols that are really specific to NFTs. There's a lot more out there, but I'm just selecting the two most common ones, which are, or the three most common ones, which are the ERC20. I'll explain why. This was because this was an early NFT format. Then the 721 and the 1155 protocol type. So some platforms allow creators of NFTs to also receive royalties for resale of each NFT. We can think of like OpenSea. But what you have to consider that with most of these protocols, it's not actually it's not actually programmed into the ERC 721 or 1155 protocol. So this is why you need these centralized platforms to pay out these royalties directly to the artists, right? But there's new protocols out there that are also solving this. But again, these are like the main two out there, or the market standard, I'd say, at the moment. So on screen you see these three different protocols. The ERC20 is mainly used for cryptocurrencies currently. They're fungible tokens, and then the 721 are for NFTs. And just from the historical perspective, the ERC 721 came out after the ERC20, and the more newer and efficient protocol is the ERC 1151, which allows you to have both fungible and non-fungible elements. So let's take a quick look at the two standards a little bit more in detail. The ERC 721 allows, for instance, for tokens to be transferred between wallets and currencies. It allows you to check the total supply of NFTs on a network, allows you to query the owners of specific assets, etc. And probably most NFTs today are 721. An example of that is the Bored Ape Yacht Club that I mentioned earlier. Then the 1155, again, it has both fungible and non-fungible characteristics. So these allow multiple states for you to be able to, let's say, make in-game payments while also having a fungible token, all on the same smart contract address, right? On the same wallet. And you can also, with the 1155, you can actually send multiple NFTs in a single transaction, which means that transactions are cheaper. For those of you that have NFTs, you know about these pesky gas fees that you have to pay at every whichever point you get to. So this is something that is an advantage here, right? You can think of as an example of like a practical example of an 1155 token is basically, you could imagine you would buy a ticket to a Beatles concert, for instance, and then you would pay for this, and then at the end you basically have an NFT, which is a collectible, and then that's the non-fungible element. So it starts off as fungible, and then it switches over to the non-fungible. So now let's look at, now that we've looked at the different standards, let's move to a quick overview of the NFTs, of the history of NFTs, and the use cases come later. So NFTs didn't just pop up suddenly, they evolved. Some of the first use cases were, or the first, I'd say, forms were colored coins, which started off around 2012, 13. They focused more on proof of ownership of real world assets. So you had like cars, real estate, equities, bonds that were based on the Bitcoin blockchain. And the problem with these were that storage capacity was very small, and the projects quickly came under regulatory scrutiny. Keyword securities, right? So the result at the end was that the ERC-20 protocol became the dominant standard. And then between 2014 and 2017, a lot of P2P platforms such as Counterparty started to merge and provided features such as tradable user-created currencies, financial instruments, and decentralized asset exchanges. In 2015, Spells of Genesis launched on Counterparty, making it the first game to offer in-game asset tokens based on the Bitcoin blockchain, and they also did an ICO. At the same time, other players started to enter the market, and in 2016, trading cards like Zugio and Rare Peeps, which are basically frog memes, launched on Counterparty as well. So this was really an important step for the future of the NFT technology, because these memes gave birth to the art space on the blockchain, right? In 2017, also a year later, the Ethereum blockchain basically was proven to be the better blockchain for digital assets, and Rare Peeps moved to Ethereum. Larva Labs created the CryptoPunks, where they originally started with the ERC-20 standard, and were limited in quantity, and later that switched over to other standards, right? CryptoKitties was also first project that launched. CryptoKitties was actually the first project to launch in the ERC-721 standard, and that's where the NFT space really started to get attention. It was broadcasted on CNBC, Fox News in America, and so on and so forth. So fast forward to 2020, that's where really the big phase of the hype began. And I think that the key moment that you can really think of is the auctioning of Christie's, of Mike Winkelmann's every days, the first 5,000 days, for about $69 million US dollars in early 2021. I think that was in March, right? So about a year ago now. The Bay Yacht Club, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, not the Bay Yacht Club, started to emerge and gain popularity also in 2021. And this is really the point where NFTs turn into an exclusive community. So now let's look at the use case for NFTs. So what are the use cases and what are the possible business opportunities? Let's keep in mind that we're still at the early stages of adoption of these use cases, and they will constantly evolve. Let me give you a quick look at over the most common use cases. I think we've already touched upon the concept of digital art and collectibles, because I think this is probably the use case that is most obvious to most people, but it goes further than that. So with respect to digital art and collectibles, we can say that NFTs are possible as both digital twins or native tokens. So you can basically have an NFT which is really native to only the blockchain technology, available in the virtual world on your computer, or they can also be linked to a real world asset, like for instance a house or something like that, right? NFTs offer artists a new channel to showcase their art. They can interact with fans, and really the advantage is that they cut out the middleman, and they at the end have higher profits through obviously royalties that you have on these different centralized platforms like OpenSea, right? Then in-game assets is another major use case, obviously, because NFTs can be used for things like virtual outfits, avatars, and gadgets, primarily in the metaverse, or in normal centralized games. Then, with respect to content ownership, we have to say that in Web 2, monetizing content was actually quite difficult. And in Web 3, so creators of NFTs can now own assets, both digitally and physically, and content can be monetized, meaning that you can take away the control from these big tech firms. And an example of that would be the monetization of a blog post or a news article on the blockchain, right? And you just receive maybe a couple cents for each view of a blog or an article on your website, right? Then ticketing is also a really interesting use case. We see a lot of sports companies jumping on this. And the idea behind it is that you have an original and unique online ticket that can be sold as an NFT. And by this, you're really eliminating counterfeits. And you also, at the same time, you allow for more fan engagement. So the community can start getting involved in these events more in a more closer way. And that builds, obviously, the brand and brand involvement with these events and the brands that are supporting them. So obviously another advantage is that artists or the event organizers can participate in the resale of these tickets. This is a real world, I'd say, challenge. I mean, you can think of black markets, right? Every time you have like, I don't know, an Ed Sheeran where you're bound to find somebody selling a ticket, and you're never really sure if the ticket that you've bought is actually going to let you in at the end of the day, right? And another cool example that I saw last week is a New York-based restaurant, which is actually issuing NFTs for member access to the restaurant and to the club, right? Then moving on to the metaverse, NFTs and cryptos are really a major component for these virtual worlds. This starts with the ownership of land and parcels in the metaverse, avatars, and other digital collectibles, but will quickly spread to create entire metaverse economies. And finally, DeFi. NFTs can be used for, let's say, loans in cryptocurrency. So you basically you can lock up an NFT and then collateralize it in the form of an ERC20 token. And I'll go into this on the next slide a little bit more when I talk about DeFi and NFTs. So decentralized finance, or DeFi, provides financial services or financial products as well, without centralized intermediaries, by operating through automated protocols called smart contracts on blockchains. And the really unique thing about smart contracts is that you can think of a smart contract as like a sandwich, right? You have some basic functionality that you can pack as the bun of the sandwich, and the smart contract in the middle can you can automate through a bunch of scripts to, I don't know, adjust your portfolio or whatever else you want to do pack into this smart contract. So the possibilities are endless. You can really automate a series of steps with these smart contracts, right? And we expect regulators to really pay close attention to such business models due to the systemic risk, and also the ecosystem is sort of perceives this sphere as sort of lacking regulation, which isn't really the case. So this is why we also recommend get legal advice on this topic before you start a DeFi project, to make sure that you don't need a license for this. So let's look at 4 ways that NFTs can be financialized. On the first side, you can see that a simple way to invest in NFTs is through fractional ownership. So unlike stocks, bonds, or traditional asset classes, tokenized assets can actually be cut up or fractionalized into tiny parts and traded. So an example of that is NFT art that can be traded on fractional.art. Then on the next use case is also the possibility to use NFTs as collateral for a loan. This is what I was talking about earlier. So basically, you have platforms like NFT FI that you can put an ERC 721 token up for collateralization. So it locks up the ERC 721 in a smart contract, and it gives you a loan in the form of Ether, for instance, which is a cryptocurrency in the ERC20 standard, right? Then on the third point that I want to discuss here is that NFTs can be traded on more and more platforms, which are constantly growing and adding their use cases. This means that liquidity is rising for this asset class. And you can think of, for instance, Rarible, where you can buy, sell, and trade art, collectibles, and even land. And there's other platforms that offer music investment. There's several companies that we're actually advising in the tokenization of music and the rights of artists in their work, right? In their music. And then finally, also decentralized platforms are offering more and more traditional investment products like futures, options, swaps, notes, staking, and other fund-like investment opportunities. And obviously, this has the advantage of reduced cost and transaction speed improvements, because you don't have the whole DVP problem. You're eliminating a lot of different intermediaries, and settlement is basically instant, right? So that's the overview of DeFi, and I'll move on to the NFT market real quick. The NFT market, as you can see on the left-hand side, has really exploded in the last 6 to 9 months. The number of NFT sales picked up dramatically after March 20, particularly. You can see that on the yellow line there, and the red side is the volume in dollars. So the monthly sales volume passed $500 billion US dollars in at the end of the year last year. And on the right-hand side, I want to point out that user demographics. There was one study that was conducted on the user demographics of the use of NFTs, and what they found out was that NFTs have actually become. There's actually been a change in the demographic of these crypto consumers, you can say. You can see particularly that more females, especially millennials, around the age of 18 to 34, now have NFTs. And in comparison, there's a statistic out there that about 90% of Bitcoin users are male. So this is something to consider when you're creating NFTs or setting up a business. NFTs are truly gender equal or neutral or gender neutral products, right? So let's move on to the metaverse. NFTs are basically the backbone of the metaverse. But let's take a step back and really ask, what is the metaverse, right? Basically, the metaverse is a virtual world where people are able to socialize, play games, watch movies, attend events. And that could even be a professional event, like a business meeting, right? And entire economies are expected to grow in the metaverse in the future. And the metaverse has both decentralized players or platforms like Decentraland, and centralized platforms like Roblox, Microsoft, and obviously Facebook with their rebranding to Meta, right? And time will tell which model will really be prevalent. So the decentralized or the decentralized model. What I think what we can say is that platforms will probably become more decentralized, and there will be more of them. But I don't see full decentrality or I don't see these centralized platforms disappearing. Their market share will probably just be a little bit lower, but and I think there will be a more healthier ecosystem out there. Another aspect is decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, and the metaverse gives the community the possibility to participate in the development of the metaverse through so-called governance tokens. And really the benefit is that the community is in control of how the virtual worlds look like in the future. And they can vote and or propose changes to the metaverse. And we expect that DAOs will allow the metaverse to grow into a more virtual society, right? There's one caveat, obviously, with DAOs, and I'll go into that in a little bit on the legal part. DAOs are very close to collective investment schemes, so you do really need to be careful when setting up these DAOs, and we can help you with that. What we can say is that NFTs and cryptocurrencies will be the heart of this virtual metaverse economy, and they will be used to prove ownership of digital assets and also allow for payment in the metaverse, right? And the hope is that all NFTs will be interoperable with the different metaverses and the different platforms out there. So let's take a quick look at who's actually active in the metaverse economy. In 2021, a rat race broke out with Facebook's Meta and other big tech firms trying to enter the metaverse. Their goal is to attract as many people as possible to their environment, and these tech firms are pushing into two directions. So basically open sourced and decentralized, and the others are more focusing on centralized metaverses. Goldman Sachs actually estimates that the metaverse market may double to about 800 billion by 2024. And just to give you a quick overview of the key players out there. So as I mentioned, Facebook and now Meta is planning to invest $10 billion and to hire 10,000 employees for their metaverse strategy. Roblox, a gaming platform, is helping Nike, for instance, build Nike Land, which is an immersive store for their products within the Roblox platform. Microsoft also has their own version of a professional metaverse platform called Mesh for Teams, which allows you co-workers to collaborate in the metaverse. And they're actually also buying Activision Blizzard, which is a gaming company, for about $69 billion to actually help improve the whole user experience as well, right? Then there's Decentraland, which is metaverse, which is the metaverse version, or had the metaverse version of the Australian Open on it, and allowed fans to actually explore the arena, watch matches, and the participants also received a collectible NFT called an AO art ball for participating. So what do NFTs actually mean for the metaverse and Web3? So we see that NFTs, metaverse, and Web3 are not easily separated from one another. I think to sum up, we see that there's three main effects that NFTs have on the metaverse and Web 3.0. First is digital identity. There's constantly new forms of stable and secure digital identities coming out, and these are really the key pillars of the development of Web3 services. So think of these like wallets and used for logging into the metaverse or to NFT platforms, and that the user experience still has to be probably fine-tuned a little bit, but you can see that it's actually quite, as we saw at the beginning with the questionnaire that you filled out, this seems to be fairly simple in comparison to actually, going about buying an NFT, right? And NFT-based avatars will probably be a major part of our identity in Web 3.0, right? Then the second point, digital assets, as mentioned earlier, NFTs provide the backbone of the metaverse and Web3, and give us the ability to own both digital natives and the twins of assets. Then third point is the meta and Web 3.0 economy. So we expect that inside the metaverse and the Web 3.0 economy, new jobs and services and infrastructure projects will become more and more real. And with that comes jobs for developers, architects, community managers, metaverse tour guides, and other people. Through DeFi projects, we also expect that P2P finance is going to grow. And with that, with this intro to NFTs and metaverse and Web 3.0, let's look at the possible challenges of Web 3.0 and NFT-based business models. So individuals and businesses that want to enter into Web 3.0 and NFTs, I'd say are really entrepreneurs to the fullest extent of the word. Those entering now are really forming the future. But leaving the pomp aside, I'd say success is not pre-programmed. We see that the core element of Web 3.0 businesses that use NFTs need to think about 5 main things. So they need to think about having the right product, the right team, the right promotion, the right revenues, and finally the right plan. The challenges that we see from working with Web3 firms is that they really aren't paying attention to these all of these aspects together. So we really recommend thinking about your product. So think about, in the first step, what products and services do your customers need and want. We recommend testing the waters and starting out small with an MVP and growing from there. We also say that you should think about whether you will create your own platform. So will you build one from scratch, or will you use an existing platform like OpenSea, with the limitation that you're obviously dependent on these platforms because you haven't created them. Promotion. On the promotion side, how will you find customers, or how will customers find you, right? Think about also how to grow your specific community. With respect to revenues, you need to think about how will you make money? Will you create NFTs? Will you resell them, or will you invest in them? For the plan, you need to really have a strategy for growth and think about the next 3 years. So have a roadmap and think about how you'll get funding to grow. Because I think what I see at the beginning now, and obviously that's fine for the project stage, is that we really see roadmaps that are basically ready just for the first half year or year, and then afterwards nobody has a clue where it's going to go. So really start thinking about what you'll think about in the next 3 years, right? Then with respect to the team, I think the most important aspect, and anybody in the startup or fintech area will tell, or in business in general will tell you, you need to have the right team, and you need to have different for a business. You need to not only have the right team that you get along with and you can count on, but you need to also have different skill sets. So you need to have people that are working on content creation, that people that are working on the business side, the IT, so the developers of these blockchain protocols or smart contracts. You need to have legal advisors, people that are involved in community management and sales. And there's obviously going to be others more that are required for each unique use case. So I want to leave off with that, or this slide, to just remind you to really consider each use case is unique, and don't just copy someone else's strategy, because that's not going to work. So now we've laid out now after you've laid out your business plan and let's look at the legal considerations that you need to consider. Sorry, I think I switched off. Can everybody see my screen? Sorry.
We can see your screen, but not the presentation.
You're on mute.
Excuse me, sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, you need to share again.
Yeah, I clicked on something.
Also, if we can make some time for a Q&A in the end.
Exactly. 1 second, I'm almost there. Almost done anyway. There, you guys see it? Yes. Okay, so there are several legal issues surrounding NFTs. We highly recommend getting adequate legal advice before pursuing any NFT strategy, or at least in early stage. And for that, you really need specialists experienced in the areas of IP, financial markets, AML, data protection, tax law, criminal law, cybersecurity, and as well as governance. So here's a quick overview of some of the legal issues that you need to consider. First, from the left-hand side, you need to really think about IP. With respect to IP, you need to think about or consider or understand what you own and when you purchase an NFT, and what rights are licensed to you on the different platforms. Obviously, if you're working on an external platform, you don't have the same rights as a platform that you've created. I think that's logical, right? Then with respect to financial markets law, we really see we give a lot of advice on the legal classifications of tokens, and you need to know this because so you need to there's a lot of regulation that goes behind or is linked to the qualification of a token. So you need to know if is it actually a utility or a payment token that you're dealing with, or a security token. You need to think about what your obligations are for these specific tokens. How do investors need to be protected, and how are platforms and tokens actually regulated? Also, in which jurisdiction, right? A major point is that you need to think about, and I've touched upon this, is that you need to answer, do I actually need a license for this business idea that I have? This would be, so you probably need help in the area of, or licensing in the area of AML, or possibly get a license as a fintech or a bank or a securities dealer in some cases. DAOs are particularly tricky due to their closeness to collective investment schemes. Then moving on to AML and sanctions. So you need to think about what are your requirements for KYC, sanction screening, transaction monitoring. Think about what are the tools required to uphold the relevant AML and sanctions laws with respect to digital assets. On the area of criminal and cybersecurity, you need to think about how you're protected against hacking and fraud, and think about where you're storing your digital assets. So what type of wallet? Is it a hot or cold wallet? Are the assets pooled? Which providers are you outsourcing to? These are obviously topics for the more regulated entities, but you never know what will be required at the end of the day, because it's really very individual, right? Data protection, just really quickly. So you need to think about how you're getting consent from investors that you represent. How are you dealing with faulty data, deletion of data? It's not enough that you have pseudonymization, because at the end of the day, you can always repersonalize data. So you need to take measures to prevent that. On the governance angle, you need to think about what policies do you have in place. And this is a major point for the more regulated entities out there. So I'm thinking about like the banks or even really professionally run companies that have obviously corporate governance standards. So you need to think about what policies do you have in place for trading NFTs with respect to advising clients. Think about FinLec or FinZA, guaranteeing your AML obligations according to the Anti-Money Laundering Act. You also need to know your risks, so and what kinds of controls you have in place as part of your risk management strategy. Also, what we see at the more startup phase, or even with more institutional investors, always is the topic of incorporation taxes. So incorporation protects you from direct liability, because if you're not incorporated as a project, you generally are considered a general or a simple partnership, and you have direct and unlimited liability for any actions of your project, right? So it's quite important to incorporate your business. And another aspect is also the jurisdiction to consider. With respect to DAOs, there's also jurisdictions that are coming out that allow you to incorporate a DAO as a legal entity. Then move finally to with respect to taxes, you need to consider how do you qualify tokens in order to pay taxes, because it's not the same as a regulatory qualification at times. Do you know if you have to pay VAT and other corporate taxes? Another interesting aspect that we consult on is that we see is that startups are offering employee participation in the form of cryptos for these different NFT metaverse projects, and this can have big tax implications. So, but to conclude, Switzerland has taxes in this area, but they are generally very attractive in comparison to like the EU that has. I'm going to compare VAT, which has on the average around 20% VAT rates, and in Switzerland it's around 7.7 now. So that's a big difference, right? So we can help you with all of these legal issues. So last but not least, I'd like to show you what we can support you with. Here's just a quick overview. I'm not going to go into these details. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, my team and I deal on a daily basis with challenges surrounding Web 3.0, digital assets, and NFTs, and obviously the metaverse as well. F10 can really support you get your idea going in the early stages through incubation, and we can help you grow your business and structure it in a legally compliant way. I'd like to thank you for your attention. If there's any questions, you can either reach out to me via the QR code, email, or LinkedIn, or ask me directly at the end of the presentation. So I'd like to thank you from my side, and now I'd like to hand over to Marc from F10.
Thanks a lot, Cedric. Very cool. Let me share again here. Share screen. Deep dive. Cool. Did that work? Can you see us again? Yes. Okay, cool. So maybe just a few words before we go into the Q&A. Have your questions ready. So the first one is, so how do we start now, right? So how to start, right? And I think as a company, it's three things, and we heard it a little bit in between also what was Cedric saying. I think number one is really learn and explore. It's totally something new. Cedric has mentioned it's still early. It's also our view. It's still early. We don't know all the business and the use cases that will come up, but be open and explore. The second one is with what you find out when you explore, especially as a business, also build a strategy. So what's your metaverse strategy? With that tied in, what's your NFT viewpoint strategy? Maybe as a wealth manager, do you offer advice on NFTs? Do you offer insurance for smart contract hacks or abuse of or misusing? And then also start with baby steps, but try to do something, right? And we have seen many big banks already moving into the metaverse. JP Morgan has announced their launch on Decentralized, and other examples are more and more coming. Maybe on the F10 side, what we are currently doing, especially also in the metaverse, GameFi, DeFi, creator economy, is really work with Clayton, which is a layer 1 protocol, top 50 in terms of value of the entire chain. So we have worked there and are doing now an open call. And with this, I would open to questions. I know we are short, but what's maybe in the room first, and then Joel, if you have anything also coming from the audience. Any questions coming? Maybe we have a ton in the chat.
Sure. So let's start with the question on top. Would you mind sharing any of the regulatory logic that went into your project? I feel like that's already more or less been covered, at least slightly. Cedric, do you want to wrap it up in like a sentence or two?
So if I understand the question correctly, your question is what regulation applies to a project, or is that correct? I don't know if that's but
He says question was covered.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
I have more.
Slides, I think we can, we will share the recording, I think,
I
right?
also have this one. Can you explain how this use case worked for the blog articles, please?
Right. So the use case is basically this is more in the Web3 area, and you can basically create an NFT of your article or a blog, and then you can put it on the website. People link up to the website or only have access to the article if they have a wallet, and as soon as they pay, then they get access to the article. So it's kind of like a paywall, right? It's very similar to what newspapers are doing nowadays, or we're experimenting with, right? That you have certain newspaper articles out there that are free, and then some you have to pay for, right? And this is basically the use case, right? Hope that answers your question.
I think we have some Web 2 solutions, right? Medium, for example, you can read free articles for free, but then you need to pay. And here it's really more fractionalized, and so with an NFT give access, for example.
Then the next question would be, if you had to choose one challenge you and your team faces in the space, what would you choose?
I think
for
challenge,
it's education, kind of like it's still early, it's still on clarity, especially when it comes to the US, what's the regulatory, and then so I think it's really getting people educated, and it's really a mass experiment to bring everyone on the next level.
Yeah, to expand on that, I'd say it's probably the constantly changing regulatory environment. We saw last week the Biden administration actually issued a press release that they're keen on regulating digital assets, CBDCs, and other players in the crypto sphere. This largely has to do with the fact that I think for these really small cases in Europe, and I think even worldwide, we don't really have a regulatory framework that's really conducive to supporting startups or smaller businesses, because as soon as you get into a licensed area, especially with the area of financial markets law, then you start to you have a lot of governance requirements. You have a lot of obviously risk management. You have to do a lot of disclosures to investors, and sometimes there's a lot of unclarity in this regard. Obviously, if you target a little bit more exclusively the professional investors out there, then the requirements become easier. But I think for at least smaller companies that aren't really geared at only these professional or institutional investors, there's a significant amount of, I think, regulatory support that our legislators can do on a worldwide to really create frameworks that are more conducive to, let's say, like a sandbox or like a fintech situation that we have.
Especially because like crypto per se is like very decentralized and very global by the start. So I think that's the key challenge. I would just, before we let everyone jump, or maybe have more questions for those who can stay, what's still missing? And yes, obviously for all who came, we have an NFT prepared as well. It's on the OpenSea. It's on the Polygon network, so we don't have the crazy fees that unfortunately are on the Ethereum blockchain a reality at the moment. Just send me your Ethereum wallet address, which is basically the same as Polygon or also at other chains, obviously. If you don't have one, create one in MetaMask. MetaMask would be the place to go to. There's no rush. Send me one, and you will get one of those in your inbox. And the very last thing, the next iteration of the Lunch and Learn is already scheduled for the April 20th. It's up on Eventbrite. You can register already. The exact content will still be defined, but I think we get a lot of interest on Web3. We heard DAO a lot today. Also, I took some summarizing notes. I think generally we're still very early, right? But the whole thing, space, they call it everywhere. I already stopped using the word a little bit. And for me, it's really start using it, start exploring. That would be my call to action. Get out and just buy something just to get the experience, right? And get your first NFT. And I saw that 53%, so half the audience, actually planning to do that. If you have questions, maybe we can also help there. Yes, that's it on our end. Like whoever wants to stay, I think we can take a few more questions. If you need to drop off, thanks a lot for joining. It was a pleasure to have you. And,
we have a few more questions online if you guys want.
Yes, shoot them over.
Cool. So may you please explain the NFT crypto asset regulations in Switzerland and EU? Are NFTs considered securities or commodities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great question, and there's no one sense that I can tell you. I can just tell you the lawyer answer is it depends, and the regulators take a substance over form approach. So just because you call it a utility token does not mean it's a utility token. There's like the duck test. So if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, then it's a duck, right? But it really depends on the functionality, and I think what you really need to consider when you're creating these smart contracts, start talking to lawyers and at that stage before you create an NFT, especially when you have sort of like these DAO situations or other sort of participative schemes, etc. Or like as soon as you have something that's akin to like an equity, so like a stock, so you have participation, that's typically something that's quickly a security. Then you have all these different areas on the DeFi slide that I mentioned. I'd like to call your attention to those. Those are typical areas that can be quickly become securities. And it's not only securities regulation. You also have to think about AML. We have the travel rule that's applicable to cryptocurrencies in Switzerland and in most jurisdictions. You have to, as soon as you're transferring cryptocurrencies, you have to conduct client identification for people that with these wallets that are purchasing NFTs. So it really depends on the concrete setup. There's no really one way to just say, okay, this and this is a security or this is a commodity, etc. Right?
Cool, thank you. Then one you've already touched in the chat. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was not the one I wanted to show. First, this one. How popular are fractionalized NFTs in the marketplaces? And what special uses can we make of that?
I think the most popular I have is real estate. That you fractionalize real estate. I think that's currently the most popular that you see popping up. I don't know, like what you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can also invest in, there's ways to invest in whiskey, for instance, for those whiskey lovers out there. So really the possibilities are endless. It's really up to your imagination, I'd say.
Also art, we have seen you can buy a fraction of a Banksy. That sold out, by the way, in minutes, right? So these Masterworks, I think, is the website there.
Exactly.
But Masterwork does not have NFT as an underlying infrastructure, does it? So there's other ways to do fractional investment, right? What is the advantage of an NFT would then be the question.
So you can show it, and you really own it, and you can transfer it without some of the other restrictions. I'm not sure if is it just an account and it's, I don't know, to be honest. Let's dig into like other questions.
One final, I think.
DAO, maybe, yeah.
Swiss government allow DAO entity or GmbH? Yeah, that's a good question. So there's different ways to do it. It really depends on what you're trying to do with a DAO. So if there's generally, if I'd say if it's just you allow voting, then it's less less tricky and less regulated. But as soon as you start, adding, smart contracts to, for instance, pay out, I guess, revenues from the project to the participants of the DAO, then it becomes a little bit tricky. But there's different legal setups for incorporation of DAOs in Switzerland. There's a couple different opportunities, right? But it's not just a GmbH or an LLC, as you stated. It can be an association, it could be a trust, it could be a foundation. There's a lot of different options out there, but it really depends on the specific use case. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, I think that would be a session in its own, like looking into the DAOs and what's possible there. I think then generally what we see, like in Web2, maybe companies build communities, right? So that was Facebook building all their communities and making their groups. And now what you see in Web3 is actually the communities that come together that build companies, pretty much. Like in a DAO, they come together as a Telegram group or a Discord channel. And then with that, they build a full company on the back of it. And as an investment, shared investment into something, or also like for a good cause, or if there's tons of possibilities, it really flipped the model and gave power basically back to the individual.
Yeah, and if you need help with that, we're dealing with this on a daily basis. There's a couple tricks to it as well. It's not so straightforward. So we can help you with that if you're interested in bringing your business to Switzerland. And we have experts that really deal with incorporation in our team within the legal department. So you're in good hands there.
Cool.
Thanks. Joelle, is there anything that we missed that we need to cover? Otherwise, I would end.
I think we've covered all the questions.
Perfect. So thank you all again for joining. It was a pleasure to have you. Hopefully we inspired a little bit some action. If you have time, please go through the last questions also on the Mentimeter that I shared initially. We would like to get your feedback, also a little bit what was the most useful, what did you learn today? That would be super cool. And also if it's effective and something that you want to get active on. Thanks a lot and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.